Hey everyone, Brendan Sander here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to another episode of New Music Finds, where I like to collect together all the different things that I've purchased over the past week, present it to you guys, give you a little bit of background on it, maybe turn you on to something new. I've got some records, I've got CDs of course, but I've also got a book this time. 15 total things to run through with you. We'll get into it here in just a bit. But before we start, if you're new to my channel and haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things do help support my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, if you turn on notifications, you're going to stay up to date on everything going on in the world of music, just like this, with New Music Finds, where I'm talking about all the stuff that I picked up this past week. Got some new stuff, some old stuff, classic, you name it. Got a little bit of everything here. So I'm going to kick off with new releases that just came out this past Friday, July 26th. The big one that came out was the Police Synchronicity 40th Anniversary Edition of their 5th studio album. It was also their final album. This one here being a 2 CD edition. So you get the original album itself, and it does have the added track Murder by Numbers, which I believe was a single that then they tacked onto it. It's not part of the original album. So 11 tracks. CD2 is the B-sides and bonus tracks, and that's the same disc number 2 that's in the box set, for which I have done a full review of. I'm going to leave a link in the description. I did that one with Anthony Coviello over at Sound Exchange. But 18 tracks on the second disc, the CD edition of this, spanning from remixes, outtakes, backing tracks, live, lots and lots of different stuff. So very cool to gather all that stuff up here on disc 2. But at least for me, and if you saw the review, you know my stance on it. I felt that the box set itself didn't really present to me enough stuff that was worth picking it up. It was a good price at $125 for 6 CDs, but the way that they sequenced the material, having the same track in different versions, one right after the other before it moved to another track, was not the way that I prefer to listen to things. I tend to get bored if I'm going to listen to the same track over and over, even though some of those were very, very different. Sometimes I'm okay with that, sometimes I'm not. I think it really just depends on how big of a fan you are of that band. And while I do like the Police, they are not a favorite band the way some of the other bands that I listen to, that if they did that, I'd probably be okay with it. But all in all, yeah, I picked up the 2 CD edition of this, and I am enjoying that. During the What Just Dropped episode, I showed you guys this because I had gotten it a little bit early, but the Police Synchronicity, the picture disc edition of this. And this here was kind of cool, and generally I wouldn't pick up vinyl just for, picture disc or something like that. But the reason that I liked this one here was that it has an alternate sequence, and it's the original A&M Records mastering of it. Then when Anthony and I were doing the box set review for Synchronicity, he mentioned that there was one track on here that has an extended version, a second verse, or not a second, but an additional verse, not on the original one, and it's Walking in Your Footsteps. Because I checked it against this one here, and Walking in Your Footsteps is 3 minutes and 36 seconds on the quote original album, although the original mix and everything is this here. This one is 4 minutes and 50 seconds. So not only do you get the different track listings, so the original sequence and the original master, and that longer version of Walking in Your Footsteps, it's also the picture disc. So I thought it was worth picking up and having it in the collection for that reason. I love alternate editions of albums. I almost wish that that version of the album had been included in the box set. I probably would have shelled out the $125 just because of that, to get an alternate edition of the album, or if they had sequenced the songs themselves as individual albums, but demos, then backing tracks, rough mixes, alternate takes, etc. Anyway, there's that. Now, something else, not a new release, but related to the Police, I wanted to show you guys this. Ghost in the Machine picture disc. And so much like this one here, when Anthony and I were talking about this and we did a little bit of research, we found out this existed and we didn't even know that this had come out. It kind of ran under the radar for us. It is an A&M Records release. It's official, and it's got 3 or 4 bonus tracks on it that are not part of the original album, extending this to 14 total tracks now. And so this one here also has an alternate sequence on it, an alternate track listing, but then 3 additional tracks: I Burn For You, Once Upon a Dream, and Shamble, all worked into this. And there's the front, there's the back side of it. I don't like that it's in this plastic sleeve. The ends will tend to curl on this. You can see it does stick to the record, so you got to be careful with that. And the sticker on it is already beginning to peel off, and it's brand spanking new. So, you know, it is what it is. This was the only way to get it. So, of course, I'm going to have it in the collection and enjoy it for what it is. But I really wish that Ghost in the Machine had been done more like this, coming in a rectangular cardboard sleeve, even if they cut out to show you the picture disc aspect of it right there. All right, so that was The Police, but there's some other new releases too. Fleetwood Mac did a best of. This is from 69 to 74. So it starts with the Peter Green years and moves into the rest of the guys that, were part of the group prior to Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks coming in. So kicks off with Oh Well Part 1. Which was a single, and the Green Men Alishi with the 2-prong crown. Of course, I know that from the Judas Priest cover, but it was also a single by Fleetwood Mac. And while that's turned up as bonus tracks on albums, it's nice to get it in this manner, meaning it was a single, it was not part of an album, so it appears here on this best of. And I don't know if this is the only one, but definitely 69 to 74, spanning that early period. And along with the greatest hits together, you have the 2 main eras of Fleetwood Mac, prior to Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks, and then, of course, with them in the lineup. And so 19 tracks total, spanning, I believe, 7 albums on here. And, of course, all having it mastered at the same level is really cool. And then this one here was a reissue, but I went ahead and picked it up. J.D. Souther, who became famous for having written tracks for other artists. This is his 3rd studio album, You're Only Lonely. And he's got cool guests on here like Don Henley, Glenn Frey of the Eagles, for which he also co-wrote for. He's got... I'm totally spacing now, but he's got other guests on here that are totally worthwhile that I was sort of like, wow, to who's who backing him up on here. But he wrote for Linda Ronstadt and, of course, the Eagles, and again, a bunch of other groups and stuff. So if you never heard of him, but you like the Eagles and Jackson Browne, I think Jackson Browne's also guesting, J.D. Souther. Great artist, kind of under the radar, but worth checking out. And then this new release here, supergroup called Category 7. It's got John Bush from formerly of Anthrax, but of course with Armored Saint. Phil DeMel from Machine Head. Of course, he's with Kerry King today. You got guys from Exodus and Overkill in here. Lots and lots of cool guys worth checking out, coming together, doing a killer metal album. I love John Bush and his vocals. He's one of those artists that never lets me down. So if he does something new like this, I've got to run out and get it. Believe it or not, my favorite thing that he does, though, is actually Armored Saint. I mean, I liked his time in Anthrax, and it introduced me to Anthrax. But since then, I've actually become more a fan of the Joey Belladonna years, even though I was not at the time. I was a fan of Armored Saint, and that's how I got into Anthrax. But I've come back around, definitely enjoy Joey Belladonna more in Anthrax and John Bush more in Armored Saint. But whenever John Bush wants to do something outside of that, I'm a happy camper. And then Ghost released their soundtrack to the movie right here, right now, which has them performing live in the movie. But there's a narrative that runs through it too that creates it or turns it a bit more into a movie with a storyline and everything. It is a 2-disc album, and it does have 1 new studio recording tacked on at the end. It also has a piano version of one of their songs, and of course I would tell you, except they write them in this weird way. If You Have Ghosts is the title of the piano version of it. And but it's very hard to read because they do it in a stylized manner on the back of here. But I was mentioning this earlier where this live album is the type of live album that I like. It's got so much energy. The crowd is way into it. The call and response is there. The chant, the sing along, all that cool stuff really elevates this and makes it more than just a live recording, to the point where some of that I then enjoy more than the studio versions. That's the way I like live recordings. So there are certainly ones that I do enjoy, but as a whole, I prefer the pristine quality of studio recordings and will always lean that direction. But this right here was a really cool surprise. I actually like it better than the Ghost live album that they do have out or had out before this release already. Okay, so I also bought some older stuff. I got a little bit on a Super Tramp kick after last week and their album Slow Motion, which I think was 2002. So far, final release from the band itself. And that one was, a real limited edition, website only kind of thing. Not even sure. I'm trying to remember if it's available even to stream at this point, but I couldn't believe when I came across that, and that sort of kicked off me listening to a bunch of Supertramp. So I picked up Brother Where You Bound, and this all has to do because the song Cannonball that opens this up was track on a Greatest Hits, and I heard that and I said, wow, that's a really great song. Where did that one come from? Because I don't have everything by Supertramp prior to this. Prior to the album Slow Motion, I only had 3 of their albums. Their most famous, Breakfast in America, and the one that's got Century in the title, I'm totally spacing, Crime of the Century. And then I've got the one from 1994 that had the older couple eating on the moon sort of a thing. So I had those 3 in my catalog, and it just never really branched out much, and mostly probably because they're not doing anything, they're not recording anything new, so I don't really have that opportunity to get tied up or caught up into a new release that makes me want to go back and dig up the old. But I heard this, and this one turned out to be a fantastic album. I added it to the collection. I've really been enjoying listening to it. It's only got 6 tracks on it. One of the songs is 16 minutes long, so it does balance out totally into a, sounding like a full-length release. But came out, I believe, in 1985. This was a good one. Did pick up a different best of called Autobiography, and that's because, one, I sort of eyed it for a long time because this one came out in the 80s, and I believe it came out in around, it actually came out in 86, so just after this release. It does have that song Cannonball on it. 14 tracks, but the reason that I ended up picking this up, because I've actually got their best ofs volume 1 and 2, which, is all you're going to need, but this here, I found out, had predominantly all edited versions of songs, so the single editions. And one of the reasons I didn't care for those best ofs volume 1 and 2 was those had the full-length album versions. And for me, some of the Supertramp stuff can take a while to get going. I know them mostly from the radio. I did not grow up with those albums. So when I listened to this, it was sort of like, oh yeah, that's the way that I remember it. So the fact that there's different versions, edited versions on here, made me want to have that and have it in the collection. I tend to think that will be the best of that I'm going to be pulling out more than anything else. And then also continuing on from last week when I had Country Joe McDonald from Country Joe and the Fish, and I sort of randomly haphazardly got onto something of his and gave it a listen, and turned out I really enjoyed it. I picked up one of his albums from 81, and then I picked up a best of, and I was enjoying those so much, but not really a fan of the 60s era stuff that he did with Country Joe and the Fish. A little too folky for me, and it didn't quite have that, I don't know what to even call it, but there was something that was just cool about what it was that he was doing solo wise that I enjoyed, and why I picked up those 2 albums. But I did see this one, and it's on Wounded Birds, so I like that label. Reunion from 77, and I said, you know what, this is later enough on. It's a reunion album of Country Joe and the Fish. And I thought, let me give that a shot because it should have elements of the 70s sound in it. It was after Country Joe McDonald had already been solo for a while doing the stuff that I liked. And sure enough, I actually really enjoyed this album. I'm sure at some point when I'm in a 60s state of mind and I'm listening to 60s era artists, I will go back and definitely dig into that original era Country Joe and the Fish stuff. I told you I actually saw Country Joe and the Fish, much later on version of them in the late 90s, probably early 2000s actually. I take that back. Yeah, definitely the early to mid 2000s I saw them. Opening up for Jefferson Starship, a reformed, much later era version of that band as well. Totally took a chance on this next one here. Group called Joe Hanson. This is a Canyon International out on the Pony Canyon Records label, Japanese label. Album cover just looks kind of cool. It's that 90s era Japanese release. The album's called Sonic Winter. It's actually the second album from this group that has two brothers, Jens Johansson and Andres Johansson. Jens Johansson, for sure, I know, was a member of Yngwie Malmsteen's band. He's a keyboard player. I think he's played with a bunch of different groups. But I knew him through that. Even Michael Schenker, I think he played with. And I was really curious, what does a solo album like him sound like? And I had such a hard time finding any of this on the internet to sample that I've passed it up for 2 years going to Sound Exchange. And then just in passing, I looked at the back of this and I read it a little bit closer, and it said all songs written by Johansson, and Sundin. And I know that there is a Leif Sundin singer that I have followed, a German singer who sang for the Michael Schenker group, among others, like John Norum and stuff like that. And so I thought, I wonder if that's him. And if that's him, that means there's vocals on this and it's not just instrumental. And suddenly this became much more interesting. And after searching and searching and searching, I managed to find 2 tracks to listen to, an instrumental that blew me away because one, it had Yngwie Malmsteen on it. And so I found out Yngwie Malmsteen guest guitars on 2 tracks on here, the instrumentals, and then you got these other guys on here, and you've got vocals from Leif Sundin, somebody that, like, if I had known he was on here, I'd have bought this a long time ago. I enjoy following around the artists that I like, and if I dig them from other bands and projects, then I want other stuff that they've done, and so I got that, and that was very cool. So keyboard player doing a lot of cool keyboard, histrionics and stuff like that, but also just some great straight up 90s metal stuff on there. And then this one here I'd actually seen for a little while in the Dream Theater section, but thought I owned it, wasn't too sure. Then it kind of dawned on me that I don't think I had it. And normally I would have just bought it, taken the chance, and hoped that I didn't, because I'm pretty good memory-wise knowing what's in the collection and what's not. But I said, I'm going to check. I'm going to go home and check first. And sure enough, I didn't have it, so I added this. Jordan Rudess and the album Feeding the Wheel, which came out in 2001. And I knew I didn't own it from 2001, but I thought I had had a copy in the collection, and I guess I didn't. Went to my section, and sure enough, not in there. Found other Jordan Rudess solo material, but not this one. And was really glad, and then I kind of realized why, because I found out this was a 2022 reissue. It's probably been out of print. I probably did want it in the collection and just never came across it. And so probably on my mind from hunting for it for so long and never finding it, that I thought I had just found it and had it in the collection, but I didn't. And we got cool guest people on here like Terry Bozzio on drums and Steve Morse on guitar, John Petrucci, fellow Dream Theater member, on guitar, Billy Sheehan on bass, Mark Wood on violin. So a lot of cool guys that do their own lead stuff on here, joining in with Jordan Rudess. And if you like Dream Theater, you're going to love this. It's great instrumental stuff. And I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but I got a new album by Victory and Culture Killed, or Killed by Culture. I don't remember, something along those lines. And that album blew me away. I was really surprised by how good that album was. Like I said, I had it on cassette back in the day, but for whatever reason, it didn't really register. I didn't miss it. I never really thought about it. Wasn't one of those ones that said, man, I got to track that down. So I randomly picked it up on CD, and I've been listening to that nonstop. So it made me want some more Victory in the collection. I know they've got a brand new album coming out, but I bought their last album, Gods of Tomorrow, and got a hold of this. Very excited about it. It's all different lineup now. It doesn't have Tommy Newton on guitar. Still has the accepted guitar player Herman Frank. He's the only one still there. And incidentally, not an original member. He didn't start out with the group. He came maybe on the second album or something. So, I don't know if I don't really know the rest of the names of the guys very well, but I do not believe there's any original members left. But the most famous guy that was in the group, Herman Frank, still there, still spearheading, this lineup of the group. And it's really good stuff because it's not quite accept. So it's not full on metal. It's more hard rock meets metal. And that's one of the things I always kind of enjoyed about them. They kind of straddled back in the day, the glam metal sound with the metal sound, and still doing that to this day. And then last week, I also picked up the Eric Martin Band Sessions, Sucker for a Pretty Face Sessions, reissued by a label called Metallic Blue Records. I talked about that. That was really cool. And it made me think, what, if anything else, has that label done? Somebody mentioned that they are reissuing the band 415, which is the Eric Martin Band, before they changed their name to the Eric Martin Band. So 2 albums from 415 will be released, I believe August 23rd, I can't remember, but it's coming up. This person or someone else mentioned that this stuff was already out. And it probably is if you order it from the band's website, I don't know. But I know at least if I'm ordering it through Amazon, it has not yet been released. So that is coming down the road. But I simply just typed in Blue Metallic Records into Amazon, and lo and behold, a whole bunch of stuff that this label is putting out. And one of the releases was this, a group called Johnny, and it's called No Destination. That doesn't look like much, but it does look like some glam metal stuff. So I took note of this, and I read a review on it, and I found out that the guitar player in here, let me find his name, Danny De La Rosa, on guitars, is from Babylon AD. And so immediately I was like, wait, what? I had some stuff from Derek Davis, the lead singer of Babylon AD, but I didn't have anything from anyone else, nor did I know that they had anything out. And probably because this was not released back in the day. This is another one of those things getting its release now. 2023 it came out. There's a bunch of stuff. So if you're a glam metal fanatic like me and you're trying to collect everything that was ever released by these guys, check out Blue Metallic Records, because they got a bunch of stuff already released and a bunch of stuff forthcoming. And this one here, having the guitar player from Babylon AD, you'll understand why Babylon AD wanted him to join the band, because this is some really good stuff too. All right, and I mentioned that I got a book, and I talked about this in my Music News Roundup episode from 2 weeks back, I think. And it is the Jack Russell book, lead singer for Great White. It's called The True Tale of Mr. Bone. Mr. Bone being one of the Great White songs off the, I believe it was the Twice Shy album. This is written with K.L. Dottie, and she did this with him, and I really haven't checked it out just yet. It's a big book, as you can see. It's a hardback. It's a little pricey. It was in, 35 plus, I think, when I bought it, and it was 45 or 47 when I first saw it, so it's come down a bit. It's got a lot of photos in the beginning part of this. Well, that might have been the end of it. See if I can, let's see, there we go. So yeah, you can see there's some cool photos and stuff. It goes through a little bit of it. Sometimes that's in the middle, but it's early on in it. Cool stuff in here. It goes back and it touches on the Dante Fox days before Great White was Great White. The text that's in here, good sized text, so it's not tiny text. The one thing that bummed me out a little bit, but it might turn out to be cool, is that at about 2/3 the way through the book, this much of it is the book itself. this much of the book is people talk interviews with people talking about Great White, Jack Russell, stuff like that. And the text that's in here is very large. And so it's not a full-on long book, but I will say this, the part of this that is the book itself is, I want to say, is it 200 pages? Yeah, it is 200 pages. I mean, they kind of could have just gotten away with that and maybe even done it as a softback. And maybe it will come out that way and it'll be that much more cost effective. But don't go by the blurb on the back. I've heard that story told 100 times. I'm sure it's supposed to mean that Jack has lived a really cool, interesting life. But bottom line is, in a lot of cool bands, up and coming, in the California, the Hollywood, California scene and San Francisco scene and that kind of stuff. Goes to jail, gets out of jail, rejoins Great White. They go through the period. Obviously, there's their heyday and what they did. There's that horrible fire that he was part of, losing the Great White guitarist that he had at the time, reforming Great White, all that sort of stuff going on to having the fallout with the band members. So this should be a really cool read overall. I chose to buy it because we just learned that Jack Russell has dementia. He is retired from touring. It does not sound like he will be doing anything musical. He is bowing out gracefully. And while this book came out and was written prior to that announcement, and he may not have even known at that point, so I do not know how this book is going to end. But for me, this book will have now captured his whole life, and it's a good way to get that whole life story. And I thought it was a great thing, so I went ahead and picked that up. When I give a good read to this thing, I'll probably talk to you guys about it again, give you a heads up on what I thought about it. Sometimes those books that, very minor, small publication, and you think it's a knockoff and it's not going to be very good, turns out to be great. I had a Bobby Blotzer book that was awesome, a Stephen Pearcy book that was awesome, and these things looked like they were crappy, autobiographies. They didn't look like anything. And I took a chance on them because they're my heroes, and they turned out to be phenomenal reads. So you never know, and I'm really kind of hoping that that's the same. This is going to fly under the radar. Not people are going to know what it is. It doesn't even mention that it's a Jack Russell, autobiography or biography or anything like that. Or, it uses the title Mr. Bone without saying Great White, probably a legal reason. But all in all, it doesn't really call much attention to it being Jack Russell or about Great White. And I think that's going to do it a disservice. But like I said, I think that's probably legal reasons. Anyway, this book, can't highly recommend checking it out yet, but just I hope from that explanation of what this is, what will be contained in it, you might want to take a chance on it too. But those are the 15 items that I picked up: the books, CDs, 2 LPs, lots of cool stuff this past week. And if you're a glam metal fan, maybe you found something new with this release by Johnny. And the title of this one, No Destination. And I know that, I think there's actually an even earlier release that's related to this one that comes before that. I saw 2 things. I just only picked up one. Now that I kind of know what the quality and stuff is, I think I'm going to be checking out more from this label, Metallic Blue Records. Okay, everyone, take care, have a good one, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye, everyone.